They have covered up, never been an inquest. They have not allowed a public inquiry into what happened to Diana in this country. And that has fueled already conspiracy theories for the last 6 years.
When a firefighter who was present at Princess Diana's final crash scene finally broke his silence, no one could have imagined what he was about to reveal.
It is a mystery why they were where they were, because many different ways of getting to the apartment that they were going to at the top of the Champs-Élysées without going via the Champs-Élysées.
Hidden for decades behind official reports and unanswered questions, his account brings chilling new light to that tragic night in Paris. From haunting details at the crash site to the alleged final words he claims he heard, each revelation deepens a disturbing mystery. But what exactly happened in those final moments, and why speak now after so many years? This is the story. The final night in Paris. On August 31st, 1997, the world was quietly changed forever. In the heart of Paris, a black Mercedes rushed through the night, its engine cutting through the silence as it tried to escape flashing cameras and relentless paparazzi on motorcycles. Inside that car sat Princess Diana, a woman loved by millions and watched by the world every day. Yet at that moment, she was simply tired, overwhelmed, and seeking a little peace away from constant attention. Years of public pressure, endless headlines, and cameras everywhere had followed her every step, and she longed for just a few minutes of freedom. She had no idea that the night was already moving toward a tragic end that no one could stop. The city lights blurred past the windows as the car sped through the streets, hoping to lose those chasing them. But in a matter of moments, everything would change. The vehicle entered the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, a place that would soon become known around the world for sorrow and heartbreak. Inside that tunnel, something went terribly wrong. The high-speed journey ended in a violent crash that shocked the world and froze time for millions who would later hear the news. What began as an attempt to escape attention turned into one of the most painful and unforgettable events in modern history. That single night in Paris became a moment the world would never forget. A story still remembered with sadness, questions, and deep emotion today. Even today, many people still think about that night and ask how things could have gone so wrong so quickly. The world was not only mourning a princess, but also a symbol of kindness, warmth, and humanity, who had touched lives far beyond royal walls. Her laughter, her compassion, and her connection with ordinary people made her beloved across continents. In the moments before the crash, there were only seconds that separated life from tragedy. And those seconds have been analyzed, discussed, and remembered for decades. Paris that night held secrets, speed, fear, and confusion all at once, creating a scene that unfolded too fast for anyone to fully understand. The echoes of that event continue to live on in memory, documentaries, and conversations that refuse to fade away. Even now, decades later, people still search for answers, hoping to understand every detail of what truly happened inside that tunnel, and why fate moved so fast that night in Paris. Her story remains one of the most talked about tragedies in modern history, reminding the world of how fragile life can be, even for those who seem untouchable to this day. In an attempt to escape the attention of the paparazzi, Diana was involved in a tragic accident. But what efforts were made to save the life of the people's princess? Who was first at the scene, and what did he report as Diana's final words while she was fighting for her life? Now, let's dive into the tunnel of tragedy. The whisper that never left memory. When emergency responder Xavier Gourmelon rushed into the tunnel that night, he had no idea his life was about to be marked forever by what he would see. The call had been urgent, unclear, and full of confusion, as is often the case in sudden accidents in a busy city like Paris. He arrived expecting chaos, but not history waiting for him in the dark. Inside the tunnel, the scene was overwhelming. Broken glass reflected the flashing lights, and the air felt heavy with confusion and shock. People were shouting, cameras were flashing, and the sound of sirens filled every corner, making it hard to think clearly. In the middle of all this chaos, Xavier focused only on the injured woman in front of him. At first, he did not know who she was. To him, she was just a badly hurt passenger who needed immediate help, nothing more and nothing less. Fame did not matter in that moment, only survival did. He quickly assessed her condition and acted with calm training. Oxygen was given, her breathing supported, and her neck carefully stabilized to prevent further harm. Every second mattered, and he worked with focus despite the chaos around him. The world outside the tunnel felt distant, as if it no longer existed. Then came a moment he would never forget. The woman, barely conscious, slowly spoke. Her voice was weak and broken, filled with fear and confusion. She whispered, "Oh my God, what's happened?" The words were simple, but they carried deep shock and emotion. That brief exchange stayed with Xavier long after the rescue was over. In that moment, he did not think about royalty or headlines. He thought only about a human being in pain, trying to understand what had just happened to her. Later, when he learned her identity, the memory became even heavier, more emotional, and harder to forget. The words he heard in that tunnel would replay in his mind again and again, like a quiet echo that refused to fade. It was not just another emergency for him anymore, but a moment that became part of history without him realizing it at the time. Even years later, Xavier would still remember that night clearly. Not because of the flashing lights or the chaos, but because of the human voice he heard in the middle of it all. A voice asking a simple question at the edge of life and death. It reminded him how fragile moments can be, and how quickly everything can change without warning. That memory remains with him to this very day, never fading from his heart or his mind completely over time. Xavier, one of the first responders to arrive at the scene of Diana's accident, later revealed that he heard her softly whisper, "Oh my God, what's happened?" But would Diana live long enough to fully understand what had happened to her? Were the efforts made at the scene enough to save her life? Let's uncover the devastating details. The invisible injury. At first, Diana did not appear badly hurt. In the middle of the tunnel chaos, emergency responder. Xavier saw a woman who was conscious, breathing, and able to speak in short moments. The visible injuries were clear, but not immediately life-ending. There were cuts on her skin, visible bruises forming, and a painful, broken arm. In situations like this, first impressions can sometimes give hope, and that is exactly what Xavier felt in those early minutes. At the scene, he carefully checked her condition while trying to ignore the noise of cameras and shouting around him. Everything around was moving fast, but his focus stayed on the patient. She was responsive, and that made the situation seem less hopeless at first. In emergency work, small signs like eye movement or speech can suggest survival, and Xavier saw enough of those signs to believe she could make it. But what no one could see at that moment was the hidden damage inside her body. Beneath the surface injuries, a major internal injury was developing. A vein near her heart had been torn, causing serious internal bleeding that could not be seen from the outside. This kind of injury is especially dangerous because a person may still look stable while their condition is actually getting worse every minute. Despite the hidden injury, the medical team continued working quickly. At one point, her heart stopped on the pavement before she could reach the ambulance. It was a terrifying moment, but the responders immediately began cardiopulmonary resuscitation, fighting to bring her back. After several tense minutes, they succeeded in restarting her heart. For a short time, there was hope again, and the situation seemed to turn in a better direction. However, the danger was far from over. The real threat was not what people could see, but what was happening inside her body. Even though her heart had restarted, the internal bleeding continued silently. Time was now the most important factor, and every passing minute made survival more difficult. What looked like recovery on the outside was only a temporary moment in a far more serious battle happening within. In the end, what made this moment so critical was how misleading it looked from the outside. To anyone watching, it seemed like help had come in time, and that recovery was possible. But inside her body, the situation was still unstable and extremely serious. The medical team knew that every second mattered, because internal injuries often hide their true danger until it is too late. This is why the next moments after the revival were filled with urgency, pressure, and constant attempts to stabilize her condition. Beyond the doctor's best efforts to save Diana's life, which were not enough, why did Xavier remain silent about what he witnessed for decades? Was he simply following the ethical rules of his profession, or did the memory of his final moments with Diana continue to haunt him long after her passing? Let's find out. 2 decades of silence broken. After the crash, Xavier disappeared from public view. In the days that followed the tragic night in Paris, he returned to his normal life, but nothing ever felt normal again. Like many emergency responders, he was bound by strict rules. As a member of the French Fire Brigade, he was not allowed to speak publicly about what he saw, especially when it involved high-profile people like royalty. So he carried the memory in silence, locked away for years, with no interviews, no explanations, and no public comments. For 2 decades, he refused to speak about that night. Time passed, the world moved on, and new headlines replaced old ones, but for Xavier, the memory never faded. It stayed with him in quiet moments, in sudden thoughts, and in the kind of silence that only comes from witnessing something deeply emotional. Even though life continued, a part of him remained in that tunnel, surrounded by flashing lights and broken glass. Then, after many years, he finally broke his silence. When he did, the world paid close attention. People wanted to hear what had never been said clearly before, especially from someone who was actually there in those final moments. His words carried weight because they came not from rumors, but from personal experience. He revealed something that surprised many. Princess Diana, in her final moments, was not screaming or panicking as some had imagined. Instead, she was calm, in a quiet, fragile way. She was confused, trying to understand what had happened to her, but still very human, very present, and aware of those around her. According to Xavier, there was no dramatic fear in her voice, only softness and shock, as if she was slowly trying to make sense of a moment she could not control. It was this calmness that stayed with him the most. Out of everything he witnessed that night, it was not the broken metal or the chaos that haunted him, but her quiet dignity. The way she spoke, the way she reacted, and the way she carried herself in those final moments left a deep mark on his memory. When he finally shared this, it did more than just reveal a detail. It reopened old emotions and brought back questions the world had never fully answered. People began to rethink what they believed about that night, the events inside the tunnel, and the final moments of a woman the world had watched so closely. Even after all these years, his words continue to spark reflection, sadness, and a deeper search for understanding about what truly happened then in that unforgettable night in Paris. Xavier explained that Diana's final moments were emotional and filled with a fragile sense of hope for survival. But could her life before that moment also be seen as a journey shaped by hope, love, and struggle? What truly defined the path that eventually led to that tragic night? Let's unravel the sad details. A lonely girl searching for love. Long before she became a global icon, Diana Spencer was a shy young girl growing up in a troubled aristocratic family. Her home was not peaceful. It was filled with tension, silence, and emotional distance. Her parents' unhappy marriage created a cold world around her, and as a child, she often felt caught in the middle. She longed for love, warmth, and stability. But instead, she grew up feeling lonely, which shaped her soft, sensitive nature. Then came her meeting with Charles, a man much older than her who lived in a world of duty, tradition, and royal expectations. To Diana, who was still young and inexperienced, he seemed like a safe escape from her painful past. Their relationship moved quickly under public attention and royal pressure. He was seen as a future king, and she was soon pulled into a life she barely understood, filled with strict rules, ceremonies, and constant public watching eyes. The world watched their wedding like a real-life fairy tale coming true. Massive cathedrals, grand music, and millions of viewers created a picture of perfect happiness. Diana, in her stunning gown, looked like a princess from a storybook brought to life. But behind the smiles and celebrations, she already felt something deep and uneasy inside. Even in that joyful moment, her heart sensed that something important was missing or left unspoken, deep within her soul. After the wedding, the fairy tale slowly faded into a painful reality. Princess Diana soon realized that Charles did not fully belong to her emotionally. Deep in his heart, another woman from his past remained, Camilla. This painful truth left Diana confused and heartbroken as the love and loyalty she had hoped for slowly turned into sadness, loneliness, and emotional struggle. What once looked like a perfect love story started to feel different behind palace doors. Diana often felt alone, even when surrounded by people. The support she expected was not always there, and emotional distance grew between her and Charles. The gap between public image and private reality became wider each day, making her feel trapped inside a life that looked perfect from the outside, but painful within. Little by little, she began to understand that life inside the royal world was not the fairy tale she once imagined. Love was never simple, and personal happiness often came second to duty and tradition. This painful truth changed the way she saw everyone and everything around her. The dream she once held so tightly slowly faded, replaced by a quiet but heavy emotional struggle that stayed with her and shaped her entire life in ways she never expected. Diana's early life was marked by struggle and hope that marrying into the royal family would bring her relief. Instead, her challenges deepened within royal life. But would leaving the royal family finally set her free, or make her even more vulnerable? And what would she have to sacrifice in her search for independence and peace? Let's find out. The princess the palace couldn't protect. While the public adored Princess Diana for her warmth and deep compassion, her private life inside the royal palace was very different and often painful. To the world, she looked like a shining symbol of kindness, someone who could easily connect with people from all walks of life. She broke royal tradition by touching lives in a very human way, especially when she visited hospitals, held hands with patients, and comforted those suffering from serious illness. One of the most powerful images people remember is her sitting beside AIDS patients at a time when fear and misunderstanding surrounded the disease. She did not wear gloves or keep a distance. Instead, she showed simple human care, and that changed how many people saw the illness forever. But behind palace doors, Diana's life was filled with emotional struggle. While she smiled in public, she often felt trapped and deeply alone in private. The pressure of royal life, combined with personal heartbreak, slowly affected her mental and emotional health. She suffered from depression and bulimia, a painful condition where she battled with food and self-image in silence. These struggles were hidden from the public for a long time. Even as she continued her royal duties and appearances, loneliness became a constant part of her daily life. Even though she was surrounded by staff, titles, and attention, she often felt misunderstood and emotionally isolated. The gap between the public image of a happy princess and her private reality grew wider with each passing year. Her honesty finally came into the light during her famous BBC interview, which shocked the world. In that interview, she openly spoke about her painful marriage and said the unforgettable words, "There were 3 of us in this marriage." This statement revealed the emotional reality she had been living with, and it changed how many people viewed the royal family forever. After her divorce in 1996, Diana gained something she had long wanted: freedom. She was no longer tied to royal rules and restrictions. However, that freedom came with a new kind of challenge. Without royal protection, she became even more exposed to constant media attention and public curiosity. Photographers followed her everywhere, and every part of her life was watched closely. Even though she had left the marriage, she could not escape the spotlight. Instead, she entered a new chapter, filled with both independence and vulnerability. The world still loved her deeply, but her personal space became smaller than ever. This final stage of her life showed a woman who was admired by millions, yet still searching for peace in a world that never stopped watching her every move carefully. Princess Diana hoped life after her marriage to Charles would finally bring her freedom to find true love. But was it easy for her to discover real love after their divorce? Or did leaving the palace make her search even more complicated and painful? Now, let's explore her journey toward love and the path that led her to Paris. Diana's escape from royal life. After stepping away from royal life, Princess Diana found herself in a very different world, one without palace rules, titles, or royal protection. But freedom did not bring the peace she had hoped for. Instead, she began a long and emotional search for something deeper and more personal. Real love, calm, and a life where she could simply be herself without constant judgment. In the years that followed, Diana experienced several relationships. Some brought her happiness for a short time, while others ended in disappointment and sadness. Life in the public eye made every connection difficult, as every moment of her private life was watched, discussed, and judged by the world. Even simple love became complicated when cameras were always nearby. Among all her relationships, many people close to her believed that the one she truly loved was Dr. Hasnat Khan, a quiet and humble heart surgeon. Unlike the world she had always known, he treated her not as a princess or global celebrity, but simply as a normal woman. With him, Diana reportedly felt something rare: peace, privacy, and emotional safety. There were no royal titles between them, no loud attention, just a simple human connection. Those who knew her said she even considered building a future with him, and at one point, she wanted to marry him. But their relationship faced a powerful challenge that neither of them could fully escape. The constant presence of the media made it almost impossible for them to live a private life. Photographers followed her everywhere, and every meeting became a public story. Over time, this pressure slowly broke the fragile space they had built together, and the relationship eventually came to an end. Not long after that, Diana began a new relationship with Dodi Fayed. It quickly became the center of media attention, with headlines, photographs, and constant speculation following them wherever they went. However, even as this new chapter began, many people who knew Diana still believed her heart had not fully moved on from the past. They felt she was still carrying emotional memories that were deeper than what the public could see. On that final night in Paris, however, Diana was not chasing luxury, fame, or attention. According to those close to her, she was simply trying to find a moment of peace away from the flashing cameras and constant pressure. She wanted a quiet evening, a brief escape from the public eye, and a sense of normal life, even if only for a short time. But fate had other plans for that night, turning a search for peace into one of the most tragic and unforgettable moments in modern history. Diana's search for true love eventually led her to Paris, where her journey took a heartbreaking and tragic turn. But how did the world react when news of her death broke? Was she given a fitting farewell, even after leaving the royal family before her passing? And what emotional impact did her loss have on her young children? Let's uncover the devastating details. A funeral that broke the world. After many exhausting hours of emergency surgery in a Paris hospital, doctors finally made the heartbreaking announcement in the early morning hours. At 4 o'clock in the morning, Princess Diana was officially declared dead. She was just 36 years old, still very young, with much of her life still ahead of her. Despite the medical team's best efforts, The injuries she suffered were too severe, and nothing more could be done. The news of her death spread across the world within minutes and left millions in deep shock. People could not believe that the beloved Princess of Wales was gone so suddenly. Outside Buckingham Palace in London, crowds began to gather in silence. Soon, the streets were filled with endless flowers, handwritten notes, candles, and photos placed by grieving strangers who felt as if they had lost someone from their own family. Her funeral became one of the most watched events in history, as people from all corners of the world tuned in to say their final goodbye. The ceremony was filled with sorrow and silence, broken only by emotional tributes. Singer Elton John performed a touching version of Candle in the Wind, his voice shaking with emotion as he sang in honor of his late friend. But the most painful image of all was not on stage or in music, but in the sight of two young boys walking slowly behind their mother's coffin. Prince William and Prince Harry, still children at the time, held their heads down as they followed the procession. In that heartbreaking moment, they were not princes or public figures. They were only sons, grieving deeply for the mother they loved. Even years later, the world still remembers that moment with deep sadness. Diana was not only seen as a royal figure, but as a caring mother, a voice for kindness, and someone who connected with ordinary people, rarely and especially. Her death created a wave of grief that crossed borders, cultures, and languages. Many people who never met her still felt a strong emotional bond, as if they had lost someone close to them. Her life story became a reminder of both the beauty and the pain that can exist behind fame. Even today, flowers are still sometimes placed in her memory, and documentaries continue to retell her story, keeping her presence alive in public memory. The sadness of that night in Paris did not end with time. Instead, it became part of history, forever remembered as the moment the world lost a beloved princess too soon. Her legacy continues to inspire compassion and humanity across generations. She remains a symbol of love that never fades in the hearts of many. Princess Diana was given a dignified funeral that marked the end of her journey in this world. But what legacy did she leave behind that has continued to live on for decades after her passing? Did she leave something powerful enough to speak for her even when her own voice could no longer be heard? Let's find out. The Diana Effect. Long after her tragic death, Princess Diana is still remembered as one of the most loved and unforgettable women in history. To millions around the world, she was never just a royal living in luxury or bound by strict tradition. She felt real. She showed emotion without fear. She cared deeply for people others often ignored. Her kindness made her stand out, and that is why she is still called the People's Princess today. Diana changed how the world sees royalty, bringing warmth and humanity into a cold system, and many believe the monarchy has never been the same since her influence began. Before Diana, members of the royal family were often seen as distant, formal, and emotionally untouchable. But Diana broke those invisible walls. She hugged children, held the hands of AIDS patients when others were too afraid to touch them, visited hospitals without cameras, and spoke to ordinary people as if they truly mattered. She made compassion look powerful. Suddenly, the world no longer wanted royals who only waved from balconies. People wanted humanity, warmth, and honesty, and Diana gave them exactly that. Her influence became so powerful that it earned a name of its own, the Diana Effect. It was more than fame. It was the ability to make people feel seen, heard, and understood. Wherever she went, crowds gathered not because she was a princess, but because they felt emotionally connected to her. Even today, many people believe modern members of the royal family behave differently because of the path Diana created. The openness shown by Prince William and Prince Harry on issues like grief, mental health, and emotional struggles reflects much of their mother's influence. But Diana's impact went far beyond palace walls. She used her global fame to shine light on people society often ignores. She visited landmine victims, comforted the sick, and challenged the world to care more deeply about suffering. At a time when fear and judgment surrounded illnesses like AIDS, Diana publicly embraced patients with kindness, helping reduce stigma across the world. Those moments were not staged performances. People who met her often said she had a rare ability to make others feel important, even during the darkest moments of their lives. That is perhaps why her death in 1997 caused such deep pain around the world. People did not only lose a princess, but someone who made royalty feel real, warm, and human. Even today, many years later, the memory of Princess Diana still feels present, quietly shaping the monarchy like a shadow that never fades away. Her kindness changed what people expect from royals forever. Now, every gentle smile, every public hug, and every rare moment of honesty shown by the palace still carries a quiet echo of her lasting influence and unforgettable heart. So, what do you think about Diana's final moments? Should the royal family be held responsible for her tragedy? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.